Giles Paley-Phillips is probably best known for his illustrated children's books, which have sold tens of thousands of copies and are hugely popular. But his latest book, 152 Days, is aimed at a slightly older audience. Written in verse, it's about a young boy whose mother is dying in hospital, but he can't go to visit her because he has an illness himself. And that resonates, I'm sure, with many people who are experiencing the hospitalisation of a loved one during these strange COVID-19 lockdown days that we're experiencing at the moment. And I wanted to talk to Giles about this story, about some of the things in it which resonated with me as well, and some of the things in there which tend to touch on things like topics such as mindfulness, and there's Zen, there's Taoism, as I go into with Giles. But there's also something else I wanted to talk to him about. He talks a lot about kindness and compassion. If you follow him on Twitter, his Twitter handle is Eli10, DER10. You will know that he talks about compassion, about being kind to one another. And I wanted to talk to him about how important kindness is, especially in these days where we seem to be more divided and polarised as a world than ever before. And I wanted to talk to him about how important compassion is, both personally in living our own lives and as in on a wider scale, moving people forward, moving us forward as a species, if you like. We talk about a lot of topics and we cover a lot of things relating to his book and relating to his other activities. He's also the co-host of a podcast called A Little Bit of Positive and another podcast called The Blank Podcast. Check them out because they have some amazing guests and they talk about some amazing topics. I hope you enjoy this. Check him out again. The best place to look for him is Twitter. So it's Eli is 10, DER10, the number 10. And also check my stuff out as well. I'm also on Instagram. I'm Chris Brock Being Better. This is, after all, the Chris Brock Being Better podcast. And I'm on Twitter, Chris Brock. And you can find out more about my writing and my work on my website at chrisbrock.uk. And if you sign up to my newsletter, you can get a copy of my latest book for free. So go to the website, check it out. And in the meantime, enjoy this interview, this conversation with the compassionate and kind and very talented Giles Paley-Phillips. So Giles Paley-Phillips, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today. I really appreciate it because you're probably very, very busy, I should imagine, at the moment with a new book has just come out, 152 Days. And I was hoping, we were going to kind of talk about kindness and stuff like that, but there are a few themes in the book that I thought maybe we could just touch on, or a few things that resonated with me anyway. But mainly the theme of this is about kind of kindness and being a bit kinder about how we go about things. And I appreciate you might hear my little daughter in the background because we're locked down under COVID conditions and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. Well, I've got two slightly older children downstairs playing with various different things. And also the cat's just appeared in here as well. So all sorts of distractions.
Yeah. It's like a live event, isn't it? We've got
it is.
audience, we've got everything going on. So, but yeah, I mean, I follow you on Twitter. You host a podcast with Julia Bradbury called A Little Bit of Positive. And you're very much about encouraging people, focusing on all the good stuff that's going on, sharing a bit of love, that kind of thing. I mean, where does this come from? Because I know at the moment there's a lot to be angry about. There's a lot to be fed up about. There's a lot to be kind of frustrated about. Is this something that you're intentionally working on, or is it? Why do you think we need it right now?
Well, I mean, I think we need it more than ever at the moment. Just because, like you say, because we're going through such turmoil globally as well, not just nationally. So I think for me, kindness rather than positivity. Now, I think there's been in recent weeks people have been saying about the sort of the negative sides of just this kind of positive output. So I'm wary around the positive thing, but certainly kindness and compassion and empathy, those things. I think we've seen a lack of that from, again, globally from leaders in countries. Certainly, I think so politically, and we're more sort of divided more than ever with, what's going on with, obviously we've had Brexit and the stuff in America with Trump. So I think, we're polarized.
Yeah.
in most countries we've got this polarization, and there's been the rise of populism and stuff like that. So I think it's just a very dark time at the moment. And obviously we've been going through a pandemic, and in lots of ways that's brought people together. We've seen a lot more togetherness and compassion. We've been out on Thursday evenings clapping our NHS workers and key workers, and we've been giving more airtime to people who do so much that we've never really we've taken for granted in the past, like we say, like key workers in the NHS. And so I think, for me, the kindness thing I've been doing, it's not something I've been doing, like it's not a remit or anything. It's just inherently been part of, who I am. I had a difficult upbringing, lost my mum, was very young, and had a father who had difficulties with alcoholism and stuff. So I've, been through some difficult times in my life. But one thing that, from that time and now is that I've always had this sort of leaning towards compassion and empathy. It's always been a big part of my life. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents when I was younger, and certainly a lot of that comes from my maternal grandmother. She was incredibly thoughtful and compassionate, and I think that's always rubbed off on me. And it's just, I think there's so much darkness in the world that for me, I just want to put a bit more light in there if I can. And I use social media as a tool to do that, but also it's just part of who I am. I try every day to be kind and compassionate as much as I can. So so it's inherently in me, but also it's something that I've started to share more regularly on social media.
I do a lot of kind of meditation. A lot of these podcasts I talk to people about kind of mindfulness and stuff like that. And there's a type of meditation called Lovingkindness meditation, so metta meditation. And for ages I didn't really get what it was about, because you're supposed to send out these kind of loving, healing kind of thoughts out to people you're close to, then also to the people you're not so close to, and then ultimately to everybody. And I was kind of thinking to myself, well, what difference does it make? They're still going to go on doing these things, but actually, being horrible, or they're, it's not going to actually impact them in any way. But actually the whole point of it is to impact yourself, so you become a much more loving person. Do you think that's when you're going out there and encouraging people to be more kind, more thoughtful, and more compassionate, do you think it is because you're trying to invite more of that into your own life? Do you think it's a kind of almost like your own well-being practice for yourself?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said in that, for sure. There's a book I read by a lady called Caroline Millington called Mindfulness, which is about, and it's a great book, and it is about self-care, really, and how being, and using kindness for that as well. And I think there is an element of that, for sure. I mean, it makes, if you say something kind to someone, or you reach out to someone, or you're compassionate to someone, then yes, it gives you a feeling of wellness and well-being, and and those oxytocin levels that other person will receive, you get that as well. So there is that, there is chemical, a chemical change in us when we're kind. So I think there's there is an extent, there is that notion, for sure. But also, I just think, I don't know, for me, I guess it's such an inherent part of my life. I can't imagine being any different. So although I try and promote this stuff, it is, I would say it's definitely an inherent part of my personality as well. And not something I can radically, I wouldn't want to change it, but it's not something
do you think
I actively do.
If you are kind of embracing a kind of compassionate and kind approach, do you think that you can still balance that with the kind of assertiveness you need to in order to get ahead? Because there's often seen as, the leaders and winners are these kind of aggressive people who go out there and they smash the competition. And can you be a gentle leader? Is it possible? You look at sort of the current Western politics. It's very aggressive. It's very much kind of, we must be divided. We must build our walls. We must, not back down in the face of these protesters and all this kind of stuff. Is there room for a kind of a more gentle approach to leadership? Is it even possible in the face of that kind of competition, do you think?
Is it possible? I don't want to be cynical, but probably not.
Yeah.
I think, again, it goes back. I think, anthropologically, we are negative. We have a negative mindset because we are fearful,
Yeah, we're looking out for
and
the dangers in the jungle.
exactly, yeah. So it's all those things. I've talked about this quite a lot on various different podcasts, but yeah, it's that inherent thing. And often I think the political discussion is focused towards more fearful messaging.
Yeah.
And so I think often we do. And the idea, and when we're seeing it at the moment with Trump, and he keeps posting law and order, and it's all about law and order, and it's that power, and it's aggressive and angry, and that stokes a certain side of us. Would I like to see more compassion? Of course, absolutely, tenfold. And I think if we had more compassion within politics and the way we govern, I think we'd get an awful lot more done. But yeah, I fear that unfortunately we might not ever get to that place. As much as like in this country, as much as like MPs will say that they are compassionate and want to do the best for people, there's always that sort of cynicism in me within it that I can't sometimes can't see that.
Yeah, I mean, I do try and have this conversation with myself that I'm really lefty. I'm not
Me
even.
too.
I don't believe in party politics necessarily, because it becomes about who's right rather than what's right.
Yeah.
So I kind of believe in just good, solid, compassionate values. But at the same time, when I look at sort of a conservative, for example, someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg or something, and I think to myself, they can't be evil. As much as my kind of left-wing programming has conditioned me to say anyone who's a Tory, it must be evil and kind of inhumane. They must still be, there must be decent people over there, but with opposing views. And it's getting that balance of understanding, because if you go on, I mean, you must have seen this on Twitter, you've got the left and they're raging at the right, and the right are raging at the left. And it's like, well, you would say that because you're a Tory, or you're an evil lefty, and the conversation goes nowhere. But how do you move forward personally when you've got so many people to rage about? How do you find that sort of, how do you let go enough to be compassionate and understanding when we are faced with that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, I think, obviously we see a lot of that, that aggression and that, those strong feelings on social media more than we'd probably do in, real life to a certain extent. I think we can have heated discussions with each other, but we see it much more viscerally on social media. I think you have to realize that nothing is binary. There is always nuance. And that's something we've lost along the way. Again, with social media, it's kind of polarized. You're either on one side or the other. And that's something that I think we need to engage with more, that, nothing is black and white. There are grey areas for everything. And I think that's something I try and engage with and see. I think it's good to understand and listen to people. I think listening is something that we don't do enough of. We berate people, we don't listen. But I think listening would help, certainly. So yeah, I think those two kind of things, listening more to what, I think we need to listen when things happen, like Brexit and stuff. We need to listen to why people decided to vote for that. I didn't agree with it. I wanted to stay in Europe, but we have to kind of understand why other people didn't, and an awful lot of people didn't. So I think it's, finding out and asking those questions, rather than sort of berating people for their choices. I think, asking more questions and listening, and realizing that, it's not a football match. We're not like the opposing fans. There's the huge grey area and a nuance that we need to sort of acknowledge more. I think that's another thing that I think for me I have to try, and I'm not always good at it. I put up anti-Trump posts on social media as everybody else does. So it's something I need to work on as well.
Yeah, there was a very clever American writer, and I completely forget in the moment who it was, but they said, whenever we're faced with someone who is angry or who is trying to divide us or trying to kind of, tear us apart and create a fight of some sort, we need to kind of ask, or at least in our heads, ask ourselves of them, where does it hurt? What pain is this coming from? And I kind of think that about Brexit. Where is the pain of that? Where is that coming from? And similarly in America, you know, a lot of people, working class people, and here in the UK and all over the world, you know, there are people who are having their kind of discontent weaponized against them, you know, in order to drive political gain and that kind of thing. And if we were just to sort of say, where does it hurt? You know, where are you really feeling the pain, rather than who should we blame for that? Who should we get to blame? You know, I think that's really quite important. But maybe on a wider scale, compassion does need a bit more bite. You know, there needs to be a bit of kind of assertiveness in order to drive change globally. But personally, when you have a kind of a compassionate and empathic approach to life, do you think you're on the back foot? Do you think that you're kind of going to miss out on some of the opportunities that you might have if you were more aggressive in the way you tackled things, career, you know, relationships, whatever?
I think I have to live my life how I live it. I mean, I think it would be disingenuous to say that I've got to where I am without doing the things that is being the way I am. Like, I think if I'd approached things in a different way, it wouldn't have been me doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think, I don't know if that makes sense, but like, it would have been a bastardized version of me, you know, trying to get somewhere. And I can't say for sure whether I would have succeeded any better by being more aggressive or being, I don't know, more bloody minded or whatever it might be. You know, I've always tried to be helpful, useful, and for me, making stuff or creating stuff has always been about, I think I put a post up the other day about this, actually. It's always been about just trying to touch people in a way, you know, that make their days better or their lives better, or, you know, it's always about that kind of thing. And I think it's never been about necessarily, for me, it's not about being the best at something. It's just about being able to connect with a few people through what I do. And I think has always been more important than actually being the best or being perfect or anything like that. So
yeah, I suppose it's I've spoken to several people on the podcast, and it ranges from, you know, the same message comes from people, whether they're Buddhist monks or whether they're entrepreneurs, and it's your path has to be aligned with your values. So if you know, I've spoken to so many people who have gone on, made a load of money in the city, but then had a breakdown because they realized this is not what they actually want anymore. You know, this whole idea about getting a good job and having a good career and buying a house. And then you get to 40 and you realize, hang on a minute, what have I actually achieved with my life? Why am I so unhappy? You know? But I suppose you've followed a pretty decent path of your own, because you've written, what is it, 11 children's books now?
I think it's 10. I think it's 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you
Still quite a few.
It's not bad going, actually. And from my research, one of them has sold 70,000 copies. Is that right?
Yeah, The Fearsome Beastie, which is my first picture book that came out. It's quite a dark little kind of grim sort of style fairy tale about a monster that terrorizes the small village and eats the incumbents. And then he meets his match in one of the children's grannies, who has a penchant for axes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's one of these great books when you read it. When I read it in public at libraries and bookshops and stuff, you get this awful gasp from parents when they see this. There's a page with quite a graphic. It was not a graphic, but he's chopping the beast in two, and the kids revel in it. And it's always a really nice moment when the parents are like, "Oh, don't think we want to get this book."
Like,
exactly.
It's like the twits and
exactly. It's an old school style of storytelling, which is a bit sort of dark and grim, and kids really like it. So,
but your most recent book is 152 Days, which is it semi-autobiographical? Is it completely?
It's semi-autobiographical. There are fictional elements to it, but a lot of it is, you know, based on real scenes in my life, really, and certainly the feelings within it are very much my own.
But it's very resonant with a time where I won't give the whole story away, but there's a young boy, and his mother is very ill in hospital, but he's also very ill, And because of his illness, he can't go to see his mother in hospital. And that must be resonating with people who, due to COVID-19, have
Yeah.
people in hospital that they can't go and visit because they've got a temperature or whatever it is.
Mm.
And I mean, have you had a lot of feedback from people who are going through this at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly ironic that it just came out like literally a couple of weeks before we went into lockdown, and kind of, I just didn't think about it having this thing. I mean, yeah, the protagonist is isolated away from his mother, who's going through sort of chemotherapy and stuff, so he can't see her because he's had a bout of pneumonia himself, so he's had an illness, and he's getting physiotherapy to help him deal with that. So he knows he's like in the same hospital as his mum, but he can't go and see her. So there's a lot of echoes of what's been going on. Yeah, and I have had messages from people. Some people saying they found it very difficult to read the book because they'd had similar experiences themselves, or they, obviously touched a lot of people who've been through, who've had parents or loved ones who've going through terminal illness. So I think it has really. I knew it would resonate with a lot of people, but it surprised me how many people it's resonated with.
Was it difficult for you to write? Because obviously you've mentioned already that your mother died when you were quite young. I mean, how much of this was kind of therapy for you writing this?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it was very cathartic. I know it's kind of a cliche to say that, but it really was. I mean, I started writing it many years ago, and it's sort of gone through very different phases in its lifespan as a project. But yeah, and I was really, I mean, obviously the book's written in verse. So that was something that was really important to me because I wanted to convey those emotions in a sort of more lyrical way. So that was really important to me.
Why did you?
Well, I thought it would be a better way of showing. I really wanted the book to be less. I didn't want it to be prose heavy. I wanted to describe scenes in very limited sort of sentences to make it very sort of stark, and really, just really key in on those emotions and those moments of emotions. And I felt that verse poetry, as opposed to prose, I could convey that better. And I love writing in that style anyway. It's always been something that I love poetry, and I think writing a verse novel was always something I wanted to do. So it was really important for me to do that.
I mean, it's really interesting because if I can, because I'm a writer as well, and if I can write something in the most long and convoluted way possible to describe something, I will absolutely use 5,000 words instead of 20 words. Yeah. You've gone the other way, and I found it really actually quite effective in creating the scene, because you are. I mean, there's one bit where the lad is really just unhappy with his life. And he says, my mum is really ill, my dad is never here, and I don't want a cup of tea. And it's just, there's something very emotional about that I thought was just a very clever way of dealing with it. But a lot of this resonated with me. I mean, my dad was an alcoholic as well, and he struggled a lot with that. But I also struggled with this kind of constant raging thought process that kind of goes on, especially when you're a teenager and you don't really know what's going on. Your mind is racing all the time, and you depict that very well. Sort of, you kind of say, alone with my mind, alone with my thoughts, and they attack me like a disease attacks. And then other things as well. I am the eggshell that no one wants to walk on. That to me seems like a very British thing. Of this whole kind of, there's an issue, there's a kind of elephant in the room, but people would rather walk around it than deal with that. Do you think that's a very British thing about emotions in general? Do you think we're scared of talking about how we feel?
I think we find it difficult to deal with teenagers sometimes. Yeah. I think as a parent just starting on that journey, my eldest has just turned 13, so although he's a good lad actually, but yeah, I think it's a really tricky time in life, isn't it? I kind of remember when I was particularly writing the book, going back and remembering those angsty times, and when you're trying to sort of figure out your own life, and obviously the protagonist in the book is dealing with all that other stuff as well, all that other baggage, and he is kind of baggage to everybody else in a way, like, I mean, in the book, he's kind of like, so I think there's those sort of elements of and that tiptoeing around. I don't know if it's inherently a British thing, but I think we aren't I guess as a nation, we're always a bit more tight-lipped. We're always a little bit more stiff upper lip and all that kind of stuff, and chin up,
Do you
man
think
up, and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, when we're talking about compassion and being more empathic towards other people, do you think if we were more open about dealing with our own feelings, rather than being the eggshells that we don't want to walk on ourselves? Because I spent years kind of pretending I was okay when actually I wasn't, and I think a lot of people do, there's, like you say, a stiff upper lip. Do you think if we could get past that, we'd actually be a bit more compassionate towards one another?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think we just don't, I mean, we're getting better. I think we're being more open about our mental health, for example. But I think, talking in general, we tend to just keep to within our four walls at home, and to people that are very close to us. Whereas, I think we could probably afford ourselves to talk more openly, to wider, and I think social media, people starting to be a bit more open about how they are and how they're feeling. I certainly try and do that myself to show, to empathize with other people that are going through those particular things, so that you've got that, because often, for some people, they do feel alone in their own thoughts and their own fears and anxieties, and it's good. It's good to see people like Matt Haig as well. There's other people that are very open about how the stuff that's gone on in their lives. And I think you're right. I think it will lead to us being more compassionate as a society, if we can, we can feel each other's pain a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing someone once said that, we see our own lives in high definition, but we see everyone else in very much kind of two dimensions. It's really low definition. And I remember hearing someone interviewed Barack Obama, and he was saying, what you have to understand is that these people are opposite you with their opposing views. They still love their children. They still go home and sort of cook dinner for their kids every night. They still worry about how they're going to pay the bills. They have all the same problems as you. And, but yet it's so much easier for us to kind of simplify everything by making this person the enemy, or, these people in the dinghies coming over the water are not really human, in some way. But, I think maybe if we can open up about our own kind of humanity a bit more, and not even see that as kind of a cry for help. I've tried to kind of share my bad days sometimes on social media, and I get deluged by people saying, "Oh, are you okay? Don't worry, it's all going to be fine." And that's kind of not the reaction I want. I'm just kind of documenting the process here.
Yeah, same.
But, it's quite interesting. But at the end of the book, 152 Days, there is a line that really resonated with me. Sometimes you have to go so far away in order to come back again. And do you think that is the kind of key to unlocking our real selves? You have to kind of get past all this pretense and break it all down sometimes, in order to come back and live a more fulfilled life, maybe.
I think in some ways that line, I guess, is the process the book took me on a little bit. I had to go delve into a lot of memories and feelings that were particularly hard, and I think it was a journey, and I think it was one that I needed to take. It was very much an important one for me to take, and I think that line sort of stems from that journey, really. And I had to go dig and lean into some difficult moments, and actually, and that came, a lot of those came to the fore when writing it. So I think you're right. I think, you do. I think people do possibly need to go. Sometimes you need to go to the edge to sort of step back from the edge a little bit. And certainly that was the case for me.
Do you think every trauma or every kind of negative experience needs to be faced? Because I know I heard someone say once that, even when we choose not to deal with things head on, we're still going to be dealing with them somehow.
Yeah.
And we can either choose to face it intentionally, or it will come back and it will keep kind of affecting us one way or another. Do you think it's always healthy to face these kind of difficult memories and experiences?
I think it has certain elements have to be in place. I think you need to be in the right frame of mind to go in there.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it would help to go alongside someone else. So whether it's with a therapist or a psychiatrist or something who can support you through that journey, and that's important.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be a lot of elements in place. I think diving in by yourself or forcing yourself into facing stuff, I don't think that necessarily will have the right outcomes. So I think lots of things need to align for it to be right for that person. But I think, long term, I think not facing up, that's not the right word to say, but dealing or speaking or talking about things that have happened in your life or feelings or whatever that you're going through, I think generally speaking, you are better for it if you can express those feelings and thoughts. So I think, but I think, like I say, you need to be in the right things need to be in place for you to do that.
Do you think that that can be through art? So you said that this book was kind of like a therapy almost. What about the other 10 children's books? Do you think there was a kind of a part of you, the terrible beasties that are getting chopped up with axes? Do you think there's part of you coming out through those as well?
Yeah, I think all the stuff I've created, I was in a band before I started writing, and I used to write lyrics. Certainly that was loads of sort of like, pain and angst and everything came out in those, for sure. That kind of led me into writing. So I think music, I've always used creativity as an outlet, for sure. Like either playing guitar in a band or writing. And now doing podcasts. I do put 2 podcasts, do the one with Julia Bradbury, and I do one called Blank Podcast. And certainly, like something we alluded to earlier about the fact that we are all so similar in the fact that we have all these neuroses and anxieties. Doing Blank Podcast, talking to well-known people, successful people who you think have got it sorted, and actually you find out that they're just the same as everybody else. That has been incredible, an incredible process, and has changed the way I look at things a lot more. Has actually made me more compassionate and empathetic. I think has really sort of even exacerbated that side of my personality, and has helped me. And Jim and I, who I do the podcast with, we say it's like therapy doing that podcast, because we have these conversations and connecting with people and all those sort of things. So I think all the kind of creative projects that I've ever worked on have a slice of me in them, and they have a slice of stuff I'm trying to say or trying to deal with, I guess.
It's interesting that, because I've always thought these kind of neuroses and these anxieties and these kind of hang-ups, if you like, they're the kind of things that stop you from achieving. I'm not good enough, or I can't do that. I'm not the kind of person who would ever achieve that, or it's just not realistic. But there are people who have the same hang-ups, but they're kind of being fueled by this almost. I met a guy once. He was the MD of a very successful company, and I said, "What's your biggest fear?" And he said, "My biggest fear is failure." And I kind of thought, well, that's kind of my fear as well, but that fear for me stops me even trying, whereas for you it stops you giving up almost. And it's funny how these things bubble up and sort of manifest in different ways. And encouraging, I guess, as well. It's kind of empowering to know that some of these top people also have these issues, if you like.
It's incredibly comforting, actually. It's really comforting, because you sit in a room with, I don't know, whoever it might be, some huge Hollywood star, wherever it might be, and they're telling you all the stuff that they've got going on in their minds. Think that's exactly how I think about stuff as well. I think you're right. I think it does sometimes fuel things. Certainly, if I was being honest, it probably does fuel a lot of what I do. It makes me continue to do it, as much as some days it's incredibly demoralizing, and you feel really crap about everything you're making, or if it's not things are not working out, you can feel it a lot more, but at the same time you still keep doing it, so there must be something in there, I think.
And I mean you said it took you 10 years to write this latest book?
I think it was because it was such a tough kind of write. I had to keep sort of coming away from it, and and then it was like, again, those feelings like we just talked about, like thinking, is anyone going to want to read this? This isn't very good. All those kind of stuff. Should I be writing this in verse? All these kind of questions and sort of silly kind of arguments you have with yourself when you're creating stuff. When
you are creating stuff, how much of it is kind of adjusted and manipulated for the perceived audience, and how much of it is you trying to be true to yourself and saying it doesn't really matter what people think? Because there's got to be a balance struck there, hasn't there?
There has, but I really try hard to make stuff from me first.
Yeah.
So, and if anyone reads it or wants to listen to it or whatever it might be, then that is a massive bonus. So I really try hard to make something that is really from really from the heart, really honest, and something that I've enjoyed making.
Yeah.
And then if something, if something comes of it, or because I've had lots of things that haven't come, like, I've written books that haven't been published. I have written, I've made stuff that hasn't been listened to, that happens a lot. But, I think for me, it's always got to be not about an audience first. It's got to be about the work and what, what it says.
It has to be true to your...
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah, it really does. I think, I've learned that over the years, and actually it's actually a comfort now when I think, well, that's, I can be really proud of that thing because that's how I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't matter if it didn't get published or it didn't, in a way it's a comfort, to think, well, that was okay because that's the decisions I made about that thing. And other people might have think, oh, well, you should have done it this way, you should have done it that way. Whereas actually I wanted it to be like that.
But that's kind of life in general, isn't it? I mean, I always say this: if you follow what everyone else thinks you should do, you end up living life according to their values and not your own.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like wearing someone else's shoes. They kind of fit, but eventually they take you somewhere you don't really know how you got there, and you've got sore feet at the same time.
Yeah.
Do you think you had to write those other 10 books before you could write and publish this one? Do you think it was part of a wider process?
Well, I think no, I don't think so. I mean, I think I started writing the children's books because my son was born and wanted to write something for him. So, and the band had split up, and I was kind of in a creative kind of downward spiral, I think, and trying to find other things to sort of pick me up. It's happened quite a few times. When I've been in sort of like a creative low, I've moved to a different project. So I mean, the podcast started because I was having I had a problem with I wasn't writing anything, and nothing was sort of I wasn't picking up anything from publishers or anything. So, and then I started doing the podcast. So that often happens with me. Like the band kind of sort of stopped, and then I was looking for some other creative outlet. So it's always been about moving and carrying on moving. And so I don't know really. I mean, I guess it's taught me, it was useful to know the industry, that sort of side of stuff, knowing how making a book works and all that kind of thing. I think that's been good. And that's been a massive learning curve, and something now that I try, I like to pass on. A lot of people message me on social media and stuff about like, how do you write a book? How do you get a book out, sort of stuff. So it's nice to be able to pass on some of that knowledge. And that was really good. So I think having that kind of industry education, the publishing world, that was really useful. I knew it was going to be difficult to get a publishing deal for that book, and it turned out it was that way. But yeah, so I think that was really interesting.
It was a
but yeah. So we did it through Unbound. So yeah, I mean, it was one of these really annoying things. I remember I first sent it to my agent. She said, "Oh, I love it. I think it's really great, but it's going to be really hard to get it published just because it's very personal, obviously, very super honest, and it's in verse. Like it's not, it's quite niche. Who's going to buy this kind of thing?" And I thought, wow, surely there'll be someone. And she was right. It was really, I mean, every editor we sent it to, we got really positive feedback. And we really like it. We love it. And then you go to a sales team and they say, no, we can't. We'd never sell this. What is the? We can't. What's this? Which I know, is quite normal. I'm kind of used to that stuff anyway. So it was hard, but I was so desperate to get it out. Not desperate. I say desperate. That's not probably the right word, but I really wanted people to read this story. So when we came across Unbound, and they're doing some great stuff, and it was an opportunity to work with them, and they really liked the book, and we thought, well, let's give it a go. I'm really lucky. I've got really, really lovely following base on Twitter and social and Facebook and Instagram. So, and people rallied around and supported the project. So that was lovely. And I think, again, it's because the story resonated with a lot of people. I think people
Yeah, I
wanted
think
to read the story for that reason.
there's something in there for a lot of people. I think whether it's the kind of mental health aspects or the family aspects, or growing up in hard times, there's all kinds of things going on in there. It felt like there was even a touch of kind of mindfulness in there, and sort of being present in the moment. There's one paragraph, and I won't keep quoting from the book because otherwise I'll give the whole.
Well, that's lovely. I think it's very, very kind of you. I like it.
But there's just where he says life is just a bunch of moments, thoughts, sights, sounds, and if there is something I know, now though that I never did before, is that every single one is precious. And that really kind of, it makes me think of, it's very Zen, it's very Zen, it's very kind of Taoist. There's this kind of deep philosophical element to it, which I clearly thought, you've read widely in the kind of spiritual texts.
I wish I had. No, I'm afraid not. That's just from me. But I think, again, like writing the book caused those things, like just thinking, I mean, like those moments. And I think I was just thinking, like, this is a moment writing the book's a moment, like, and all these pages are moments, they are moments. And I think that's kind of something that stayed with me, really, this idea of everything's just a bunch of moments, and there are good ones and there are bad ones. But yeah, I am someone that tries to stay in the present. I'm not although, like, obviously we're talking about a book that deals a lot of my past, I tend not to sort of try and stay in that time frame too much, and I certainly don't look too far ahead if I can, because I feel that causes too much anxiety. The past causes depression, and and the future causes anxiety. So to stay a bit more in the middle, in the present, I can sort of stay a bit more rounded and hopefully be the best me, really.
Well, I mean, this touches on Buddhism, like I said, Zen, there's Taoism in there. It's all very,
It's very lovely to describe it that way.
Masters would be very proud of very pleased with the book you've written there as well. But yeah, I mean, it's true. Who was it? I can't remember who it was, but someone very clever 100 years ago said, what is it? It's pay attention to the small things, because eventually they'll become the big things, and it's all that, like the washing machine wasn't there when you went home that day, and then, grandma bought it again with her winnings, and it's just simple things like that. Who remembers their washing machines growing up? But they're part of our lives, and it's those things that are where the texture comes from and the real kind of beauty of living almost. So, but yeah, no, I really enjoyed the book. It's very easy.
Thank you.
But also very very touching. You really get a sense of what's going on very simply and easily. And I think no wonder it took 10 years, because it's, that kind of simplicity is actually very hard to achieve, I should imagine. But
thank you. I really appreciate those kind words. Thank you.
No, thank you for writing it and putting it out there, because I think, there's so much there for everyone. But I won't keep you much longer, because I know you are very busy, and you've got children, and you've got books, and you've got 2 podcasts and everything else. But if people want to find out more about kind of what you do and the works you've produced and all this kind of stuff, where's the best place to go? Do you have a main website, or just social media, or?
No, I never did like a website thing. I think I had a blog once, but it's probably lying dormant somewhere. No, I mean, social media is the best place to find me, and you can find me at Eli is Tender 10. So that's ELIISTENDER 10. And yeah, you could. Yeah. And you can find me on that. With that, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, you should be, and Twitter, obviously. Twitter's probably where I hang out the most. So yeah. But yeah, I'm always up for talking to people. So yeah, if anyone wants to get in touch, please do.
Fantastic. And I suppose the kind of takeaway from this is just don't be afraid to be a bit more human, and to see other people as human too. Be a bit more understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's definitely what I'm trying to be a bit about. And also reconnecting. I think we lose connections. I think actually in some ways the lockdown made us kind of reconnect with people a little bit more. We started Zooming with people more regularly because we couldn't see them. Probably saw people more than we usually do. So it was really nice. And that reconnection, I'm always sort of promoting maybe getting in touch with people you haven't seen for a while and having those reconnections, because that's a wonderful feeling when you get a message out of the blue from someone, and that, to know that you're being thought of. I think that's a really special thing. And I think if you can do that for someone, even if you don't always get a reply straight away, I think just in the knowledge that you've done that, I think is a really lovely thing. So that's something I'm really keen to promote.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there is a kind of world out there of people just like us, just like you, me, like everyone else, who are going through the daily trials and tribulations of just getting by sometimes, which is hard enough, So it doesn't hurt to reach out once in a while.
No, it really doesn't. And yeah, even if it's just smiling at someone in the street, I think those little random acts of kindness, isn't it? They make such a big difference.
Well, it's funny because I always talk about the energy you put into life is the energy you get back. And an example I use is kind of smiling at people. Even if you just smile at someone in the shop, occasionally someone will smile back. But if you go around with a scowl all day and you're grumpy and miserable, no one's going to smile back at you. So
no.
And that's kind of how I see life working. If you go out there with a positive attitude and a good energy, it will come back to you. So
absolutely, yeah, I'm all for that as well. Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
No, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And thanks for the book as well. It resonated with me on a lot of ways. I think I can imagine it could be quite hard reading for people, but ultimately it's just about being human, I guess. So
yeah, and I do try to say to people, if they're if you're going through something at the moment, that's you need to be in the right frame of mind, I think, to read it. I don't want to.
Yeah. It's a very moving, very gentle book. So thank you so much for that. And
no, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Brilliant. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with me and Giles Paley-Phillips. Check out his book, 152 Days. It's a very moving and very powerful book. And like I said, you can find out more about him. Just follow him on Twitter, and there you'll find connections to his other activities, his podcast, Blank Podcast, and a little bit of Positive that he hosts with Julia Bradbury. And just follow me on Twitter. There's everything you need to know there. And that is Eli is 10 DER10. All right, and you can find out more about my stuff at www.chrisbrock.uk, and I'm Chris Brock on Twitter and Chris Brock Being Better on Instagram. All right, until the next time, hope you enjoyed that, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, do all the things, comment, leave nice comments, get my newsletter on my website, just buy all my stuff and big me up to everyone you know. And in the meantime, have a wonderful week. Cheers.